Welcome to the Sales Leaders Operating System, the podcast for sales leaders who know that success starts with strong leadership. Whether it's your first time leading a team or you're a seasoned pro, we've got the real-world advice you need to lead your team to greatness. Now, here's your host, Matt McDarby.
Hello and welcome to the Sales Leaders Operating System, the podcast for sales leaders, built by sales leaders. This is Matt McDarby. I'm your host and author, coach, and advisor to elite sales leaders all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we have an outstanding guest. Let me introduce you to them now. Now, our next guest, John Santos, was introduced to me by Steve Gallo, a friend of the show who you may have heard interviewed here recently. John's had a long and successful career, and it started with his education and experience as an airman in the Air Force. He learned a great deal about leadership there. He went to work after that at Gallo, where his sales leadership career really blossomed. And in his early years, and notably at the Air Force and at Gallo, that's where John saw the impact of discipline and process on performance and results. So since that time, he's been a regional manager, Luminous Laser, and a few other places. And for the last 13 years or so, has served in progressively more strategic sales leadership roles in the company now known today as Candela Medical. Please welcome John Santos to the show. John, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad I was able to grab you and spend a little time. We've got a lot to learn here from you. So if it's okay, I'm just going to dive in and ask you some questions and see what we can pick up. Sound good?
Sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So people who've listened to the show know that I've got this theme. In fact, the name of the show now, we've recently rebranded, is called the Sales Leaders Operating System Podcast. It's a bit of a mouthful, but from that name, you can infer that there is a theme here, and systems thinking is a big theme. Why? Because the best sales leaders that I've observed have a kind of a system or a way of making sense of all the different interconnected, related parts of the sales organization. And because they look at it as a system, they're better able to diagnose and tune and sort of make the whole system work to deliver the result that they're paid to deliver. So as I said at the top when I introduced you, you've been a very successful seller and leader for a long time. Tell us, what are the most important parts of your system?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And there's really, an answer that I'll answer now as a sales leader first, and then we'll get more into systems as far as stages and leading sales organizations or salespeople. But the first thing that I would say is when you take a look at any system, and you mentioned the military and the Gallo part, but there's also a football element to me. So I may use some analogies there, but there's structure and cadence, which is extremely important to us. And everyone understanding the ultimate mission first and the playbook that goes along with that, and establishing that as a leader from the top down, right? And making sure all leaders know exactly what the mission is. And then from there, the mission shared throughout the organization. So when you really ask about the system for us, the system is, as a leader, one of your most trusted partners immediately is your HR partner is critical. And I've always recognized that going back even to the military days, but always appreciated the partnership there, because we're really sitting down with an HR partner. And some folks have actually asked me, well, you get together with them occasionally, maybe at a QBR once a quarter. Every Friday as a leader, I would recommend this for any leader, that you have a cup of coffee on a Friday morning, virtually or live, with your HR partner, because you're going to share with each other the importance of where the organization currently is with morale, open head count. You're going to have a clear line of sight together on open territories, the profile of hiring and what we're really looking for in the position. In my current position, I oversee not just capital, but post-sale, which consists of inside sales and the field service team. So you really have to have really strong communication and have a strong partnership with your HR team. From there, I would say that as a leader, having a very, very strong relationship with your training and development team, your training team, but I call it really training and development because there's training, and if I just keep it to the medical side, but there's training clinically, but then there's the development of the individual also. Your sales skills, understanding the clinical aspects, the buttonology of a system is extremely important. But how are we really going to approach the sales process together with the customer is also important. And I think sometimes we all forget that. It's the buttonology of the system, the features and benefits. Let's go after it. Let's find the opportunities. But am I growing as an individual and really understanding how we sell even today, right? Post-pandemic is a whole new world, whether it's virtual interaction with a customer or still live knocking on doors face to face. It's a little, I would say now we're really working our way into both, right? And really trying to figure out how to do that. I would say another trusted partner, and you mentioned in the opening, we worked with Ignite. We've been fortunate enough to do that and work with Steve Gallo, and he has been with us for over a decade. But whether it's Ignite or any type of partner, consultant partner that specializes in sales growth, it's extremely important to me to get insight from others outside of the day-to-day of what you're used to in creating for yourself. What else is happening out there? What are you seeing? Can we bring you in to help grow our organization and take us to the next level with your training, Steve, with Ignite? That was really, really helpful to us, or really critical to our game. And we try to keep a close relationship with that also, because you're going to learn new things. You can read books and everything, but if you really partner with a really strong consultant, they're really going to be able to share with you. And they specialize in living in the moment, which we'll get to in a little bit. The approach of your morning at maybe 5 a.m. is going to change by 9 and certainly by noon. And so your mindset, you really have to push yourself back to staying in the moment, calming the waters around you. But when you really work with someone like an Ignite or Steve, they'll force you to do that. And they'll force you to take a hard look at yourself at practice, let's say, right? And really dig down deep and watch film with you. So again, whether it's, someone like Ignite, but someone like that is extremely important. I would really recommend to any leader looking outside to get an outside perspective of where we are.
It sounds like when you say they force you to be in the moment, it also sounds like they force you to slow down a little bit, right? That there's a little bit of, hey, let's stop, let's think critically, let's go deep. Is that, am I picking that up correctly?
That's right. Yeah. So what we were able to do is also take a look at our sales process, and I would recommend on an annual basis is to really take a look, whether you had a great year or you struggled or you just met your goals but weren't quite able to reach for the extra. I would say that if you really take a look and analyze your business at the end of the year, take a hard look at it at the beginning to take a look at where you want to go, having that type of consultant or even internal, having those types of meetings to really take a look at your sales process. How are we doing? What are the improvements that need to be made before we really dive in with the sales team in January to really kick off the year? It's been super helpful for us to do that organically anyway. But my point is if you can build that into an AOP, it's really, I highly recommend you spend the extra dollars to have someone like that come in and help you see yourself with clear eyes.
So I've heard a few things so far, John, in some order as I heard them. The elements of your system, structure and cadence, everyone understands the mission and what we're trying to achieve. So many words. Know who your valuable partners are. You called out the HR leader. You've called out strong relationships with training and development. You've also called out strong partners, external partners. Maybe you could do things that are, because they're so focused on something, very specific. I used Ignite as an example on sales process and them sort of playing the role of slowing things down and narrowing the focus. And I think you called it to being in the moment, right? First, did I capture those right? And second, is there anything else, any other kind of critical pieces of the system that you haven't mentioned yet?
Well, not yet, because I think that if we take a look at the system itself, in the playbook of how we want to, operate on a daily basis and really attacking the opportunities that you're working on and living in the stage, That would be the next step. So that's the macro look at our system and how we work together. The cadence of that from there, it's critical that we have a consistent cadence of interaction, whether it's our one-on-one reviews on a weekly basis and having meaningful one-on-ones, because it's really, to have a one-on-one is important. To have a meaningful one-on-one is will take you to the next level. And it sounds obvious, but I think that if we really all take a look at how our one-on-ones go, they can typically go one way or the other, right? They could be, how's the week going? Great. Do you think you're going to make your number? I think so. Do you need any help? Not really. I'll see you on September 31st, right? We've all experienced that. That is an example of not a meaningful conversation. But I think, we talk about our system. We really want to give our leaders the ability, and not just through cadence, but and how we head into these one-on-ones, give them the opportunity to have the sales rep say, I can't wait to talk to Matt on Friday. That's a gift that we give to each other, because if you can honestly get it to a point where both sides see it as, every time I talk to my boss, Matt, on Friday, I know exactly where I stand. I know where he stands. We really strategically looked out for each other. I'll take care of what needs to be taken care of next. And then he's going to strategically think a quarter ahead for me. And every time I talk to him, I feel like we made an advancement on my pipeline and we have clear eyes on everything. And that's not always done, if we're all really being honest with ourselves, right? And so with that, our one-on-ones are structured so that we can really try to get the most out of the relationship for that, let's say that 1 hour together, so we can both feel like we're really looking forward to this. And every time we do, we make an advancement.
Yeah, John, I can infer something. I think all of us listening can infer something from what you've said. It's that, and I like the way you put it like that. I am looking forward to spending the time with my leader, right? Why? Because there's value in it for me. It's not only good to just get together and talk, but I'm getting something out of it. Maybe I'm seeing something differently, or I'm getting sort of recentered. And maybe this is another version of you, Mr. Leader or Mrs. Leader, forcing me to be in the moment, right? It's kind of the connection I'm hearing. It's all the value is in having somebody offer that other perspective. Am I hearing that right?
Well, I think with sales folks, it's the toughest job in any organization. Doesn't matter if it's medical, selling cars, selling wine. I think that when you really take a look at the day in the life of what we really aspire to do when we wake up at 5, hopefully, and what ends up actually happening that day, it's hard. And in sales, the struggle always as a sales person is to push yourself to really execute the plan that you were trying to execute when you started that day. And then the world takes you by storm from there. I think that if you're talking to a really valued partner, which is your director or manager or whatever it may be, that person is able to give you a line of sight and staying on track, whether it's taking some things off your plate to really assist and helping you move forward and spending 90% of your day on sales activity, moving forward, feeling good about making advancements in deals. But the most important thing, I think, is two sets of eyes really looking at an opportunity together. Because even veteran reps, some of our best, the one thing that they'll all say, if you poll them, is if I know how this deal is going to go, but I talk to someone else who may be my director, and they've been doing this for 30 plus years, every time we talk, there's always one extra thing that I didn't think of. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And seeing the opportunity with clear eyes, that a true leader bringing value to a call,
right?
It's really critical. So when we talk about our system, we really take that to heart in our culture.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, John, you've said it a couple of points here, and I'm nodding for those who can see and those who can't. I'm telling you, I'm nodding in agreement when you say this job is hard. Selling is hard, and I would say the sales management job, just like ratchet it up one notch beyond that much more difficult. Now, there are a lot of ways, legal ways, that one can earn a great living. This is probably one of the hardest. You've done this for a long time. So I presume you must love it or some part of it. What do you love most about leading a sales team, leading a sales organization?
Well, I think it's funny. You and I've talked about this before, but when you use the term love it, I think the best sales folks would say, I love it, I hate it, I'm leaving it tomorrow, I can't live without it. And I have a brush and I'm addicted to it. And that's the best answer I could give, because you really, you have to love to compete. You just have to love it. You can't make that up.
Ooh.
And that goes back to the HR partner, really, when you're talking about making the right decision for both sides, and really trying to find someone who has a will to compete on a daily basis. And that really inspires everyone around you. So whether it's a leadership position or the sales reps themselves, to answer your question about sales and why I like it is because every day you just feel alive. Most of us are former athletes. Let's be honest, right? And you're never going to find that rush that you had together, the camaraderie of a locker room, getting ready for the game, hearing the band, all the things that go along with that. And you get that here. You really do get it. If you look at the opportunity of working in sales, I say this all the time, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. The most successful sales leaders and the most successful sales reps always look at it the same way. This is a lifestyle for me. And when they do that, they see it as an entrepreneurial approach to their business, no matter what it is they're selling. So one of the reasons why I really love sales is because you just feel alive every day. And I love working with the folks around me who inspire me. They inform and inspire on a daily basis. We get a lot of feedback from our sales team, and they share with us what their needs are. But they also share with us, quite honestly, if we did this, we'll be better. And we have an open mind to that as leaders, to welcome them into that opportunity, really to share what's going on in the field. Sometimes I think as leaders, we tend to shut that off, man, right? We tend to say, we know better. We know what you need. Well, ask when it's a critical time. Yeah. Well, maybe ask in a negative time when things get bad. Oh, what's going on out there? But we try to really create a culture where we're getting constant and consistent feedback from the field. As you know, we'll all tell each other exactly what we need. It's not always that we can fix the issue immediately, but we can at least talk about it and know proactively where we need to go next.
Yeah. So don't wait until things are going badly to ask, right? To engage and wonder how people are doing. Engage early, right? Early and often. Yeah, you made a number of important points there. I'm with you, and I think anybody listening, because again, our audience here is current and aspiring sales managers, frontline leaders of leaders. And I think to a person, we all do love to compete. Many of us do have sports in our background. I do, I know you do, but maybe we competed at something else. But it's that, like you said, the will to compete inspires others. I like that. Look, I've never been an accountant. I don't know what it's like to work on a team of accountants. Maybe there are some really fired up accounting teams out there, but I think the thing that's unique about our discipline is you tend to have a collection of people that are pretty fired up to compete, right? Want to win, maybe you want to bury other people, right? Overachieve, but it's the desire to get better every day, I think also, that comes directly from that will to compete. I have just got to get a little bit better at this if I want to deliver a better result, right? And if I have a leader that helps me do that, we're good, right? I'll stay here as long as I can. Getting back to what's hard about this part, I'm curious, of all of the things that make this job challenging, what have you found to be the most challenging part of leading a sales organization? And tell us what you've done about it.
Well, I would say the reason I pause is there's so many different things that have happened since 2020, right? That have shifted. The answers shifted 4 or 5 times. But I would say that
sure,
regardless of specifics of economy or interest rates or anything that we're all facing these days, that really as a sales leader, that one of the biggest obstacles you have to overcome, especially as a young leader, is living in the moment or allowing your reps to live in the moment too much. I'll give you an example. When you take a look at a pipeline with a rep, you can both get very, very caught up with the success of the moment in the month and in that quarter. We are absolutely going to make our number this quarter, Matt, right? It's clear. And then we both stop and we get stuck there. And I think the leader's job is to make sure that they remind the representative that there's always going to be October 1st and we will be back to zero. So the hardest thing for all of us is to make sure that we're not spike, drop, spike, drop, spike, drop. And what I mean by that is making sure we're planning for in our activity and managing all aspects of the business, which I'll get to in a moment to answer your question, so that on October 1st, we're ready to have spike, and spike some more in consistent success. And so how we've overcome that a bit is that in the first month, and this is just in our business, but in the first month in every quarter, we have a 25-75% rule. And what that means is 25% of your business should be working, of your time, I should say, should be working on the business that's rolled over. We all have the deals that were going to happen right on the last day of the quarter. And you have 3 or 4, hopefully none, but 3 or 4 that have rolled over. And you want to start the quarter off fresh, have a good first month, and you're going to spend time doing that. What I think folks need to remember is that should be 25% of your time. 75% of your time on day one needs to be getting after it again and rebuilding that pipeline. And that first month is critical. So you can be linear with the 25 to 30%. If you're staying active with 75% activity of that activity, rebuilding that pipeline quickly, then you should be able to get out of the gate pretty quickly with linearity on that first month. The second month, in a perfect world, really works out to 50-50, right? So if you did the work in that first month, 50% of your time is now conducting demos, doing the follow-up appointments, maybe doing those discovery meetings, getting through that. 50% should also be now working on closing business. So there's closing and hunting, closing and hunting. Some of us get caught up in closing and closing and closing and, oh, I forgot to hunt. And I'll start doing that right at the end of the second month. Oh man, I got to get going again, right? And that's where you see consistently in the differences in pipeline and the consistencies of performance. And in that last month of every quarter, it actually should shift 75%, 25%. And I think this is where it's most critical, to be honest with you. The last month, if you really take a look at activity of a successful sales rep or someone who may have gotten out of the gate slow, didn't do what they were supposed to do, right now they're just scrambling. It's all sales, right? In that last month. I don't fundamentally think that that's the case. I think that you have to remember it's got to be 75-25. You have to have 75% closing the deals. It's the race to the end. We're all in it. We're salespeople, right? That's the rush. But 25% of your time still must force yourself. I got a cold call. I have to cold call. And I'll give you an example. Right. And some folks say, well, it's hard to do. So you go back into, our systems and our process. If you're driving, and a lot this happens at the end of a quarter, I get it. If you're driving from your home, Matt, to the closing appointment, and you close the deal, and you come home, and let's say it's a 50-mile drive, that's a success, right? I think even as leaders, you're the leader. That's a success. You closed a revenue-generating opportunity. I would say be careful of that, because there are probably 30 facilities between your house and closing the deal that you could have stopped at still if you planned out the day. Let me stop off at the 4 on the way, the 5 on the way back. That's 9 to 10. Maybe found a new opportunity to backfill the one you closed. It's not just on the leadership side. I think that just on the sales side, if you really poll, and I'm sure you have, and you've had them on your podcast, successful salespeople, how do you stay consistent? They'll all tell you the same thing. I'm always hunting and cultivating my territory. I'm always thinking, even in the busy times of closing, I'm still stopping off at that one at the end of the day. But that's leadership too, because I think in fairness to a rep, they get cut. You got to make your number. You got to be there. But as a leader, hey, I know you're going to be in Rhode Island today. Let me just ask, there were 4 places on the way. Did you know that the FSC is going to be at this place doing a service call? Those types of community, that's where I value you, Matt. If you brought that to me to remind me as a leader, thanks for thinking outside the box for me, because I'm stuck in the moment and I'm going to stop by and, oh my God, you're right. They do want another new laser and all of that. That's where we've really tried to pick up our game also post-COVID. But fundamentally, all the way back to Gallo, we've had that foundational structure of just always staying ahead and staying active, even as you're closing.
I can envision people listening to this conversation, and I hope they are writing down 25-75 rule, right? And listening to your examples. And maybe they should be writing 25-75, 50-50, 75-25, 25-75, right? Now, we all have a lot of the people listening do have quarterly cycles like you do. Maybe you have if you're listening, you have a longer cycle. The point is, right, what John is describing is this discipline of always keeping an eye on building the pipeline. Incidentally, of course, before I was a leader, I was a professional seller, right? So this resonates with me. And even today, I'm a small business owner involved in a small business. Rule still applies, right? I tend to notice that when I get too deeply into delivery, I get this roller coaster effect in my pipeline. So even for people involved in small businesses, maybe hearing this, it's the same. It still applies, right? And I think that's a great way of describing it. You got there by saying, look, the thing that we have to be that's most challenging is maybe we're living just too much in the moment, too much in the thing we're doing now. But the discipline tells us we have other things we have to keep an eye on. And that quarterly cycles might pull our attention in one direction or another. But we can't let our attention swing fully in any one direction. We've got to maintain balance, right? That's essentially it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And if I could mention another, Matt, there's just more areas of opportunity that we're always trying to improve on. That's on the activity side of things. I would say that one of the struggles we all have is staying in the moment of the stage and seeing it for really what it is of one deal, and understanding who the players are. We all want to hang out with the decision maker and the person that's going to sign the deal in whatever industry it is. But there are so many influencers in every deal. And it's critical that you really, as a leader, ask the right questions. I know you're good. I know you feel good about this deal, but tell me who else is involved. And the other thing that we've done to take an added step, you talk about our state, our process and our systems, is you really, I'm a psych major, you really can't understand how to sell until you know yourself. And what I mean by that sounds a little corny, but we talk about disc profiling or insights or whatever system you use. You really have to know how you buy before you can help somebody else buy something. And what I mean by that is how many times, and I made this mistake myself, whether it's a disc or insights, so, I'm a high D or red, impulsive buyer, right? Quick, want to see things quickly on PowerPoint, don't really want to read a long clip. Like that's me. My wife, different, Matt. Like she is more of an SC or a green red. She wants to watch every YouTube video. She wants to research for the next 3 weeks. But if you're a salesperson and you're working and you're dealing with us both, and we both own the business, and you come in for an appointment with the two of us, and you are a D red, and you're going to make a relationship immediately with me across the desk. And then you're going to look over to my wife and treat her the exact same way you want to buy the car. You're lost. You're lost. Yeah. And I think as leaders, it's okay to say, let's slow down a minute during these meaningful one-on-ones. Tell me why you think you're going to get this. What are the critical areas? What stage are you in, Matt? Well, I'm in closing stage. Let me ask you a critical question, Matt. What stage does the customer think they're in? Because those poor folks are 4 stages behind you. I know you're telling me on a Friday you're going to make your number, but what I want to hear from you is let's go back 2 stages and stand with the customer and answer their questions so you can move together progressively and maybe even get this done quicker and a lot easier with a less stress and a much better customer experience. And that's leadership. That's leadership. And so it's really critical that we try to make sure that we training and development, that we try to help our teams really see themselves in terms of how do I buy? And now, oh my goodness, you're right. This is how I'm trying to sell to everyone, is how I buy, and everyone is different. And that's okay.
Yeah. One of the things that we've seen leaders do that makes most impact is just work on, because there's skills associated with what you're describing, right? Being able to have a conversation with a member of your team to help them understand how their buyer is buying. Where are they in their decision-making process? How are they making this decision in the first place, right? Asking, listening, pulling the reps in the direction of a better strategy is just one of the aspects of the job that really require practice. But if you do it, right, for those listening, if you work at it and you have some way, there's a partner you can work with that can help you to sharpen those skills, massive impact. And not only are the one-on-ones meaningful, but your opportunity coaching sessions, and even just the quick conversations you have about the next call are more meaningful, right?
Agreed.
All right. We only have a couple more minutes, John. We're trying to grab 20 plus years of wisdom here in 25, 30 minutes. So I've got one big open, sort of purposely vague question, and it's meant to just grab whatever else I can get out of your brain. What else? What else, John? What else do we need to know about leading sales organizations and from your experiences?
Well, that's a loaded question. Now you said 5 minutes.
Do your best.
I would say that one of the most important things you can do as a sales representative and also a sales leader is to always be aware of what is important to everyone around you, not just yourself. And when you do that as a sales leader in let's say a regional director in a sales team, we've talked about the day-to-day, the interaction, diving in, generating revenue. That revenue is so critically important to the organization that you're in. And not everyone can be in that area of control and cold calling. And really understanding your revenue impact throughout the organization is critical to everyone internally as well, in every department. They're really counting on you. And I think it's really important to make sure that we all remind ourselves of that as leaders, as sales reps, that revenue generation isn't just to go home and provide for yourself and fulfill your dreams. That's a given. But I think that making sure everyone understands we all own the number, but critically on the sales leadership side and the sales rep side, that number, hitting that number is so critically important to everyone's life, everyone's future. And it's a great opportunity to have. It's a lot of pressure, and it's a great pressure to have. But as a leader, reminding everyone always of the mission. And the mission ultimately is revenue generation. So we're healthy and we can grow and we can do more things together. But I think it's really critical that a leader reminds everybody of that, whether it's quarterly, annually, semi-annually. It's really, really important to make sure that everybody sees the mission throughout the year, is reminded of the mission throughout the year. Are we on track for that mission? Are we behind? Let's get a bridge plan built if we are. Those things, that communication along the way is going to be critical, but making sure that the revenue being met ultimately is a responsibility at the field level.
It's a great point. For those listening, they'll hear some common themes or threads that run through these conversations. Something you said, I'll connect it up with something I know that I've talked about and that others I've interviewed have talked about, which is the need to communicate here's what we're trying to achieve, but here's the why behind it, right? Here's why it matters to us collectively. Here's why it matters to you specifically, given what I know you're trying to achieve. And that's not a one-time event. That even communicating clear expectations between a frontline manager and a salesperson comes down to communicating the answers to those, what are we trying to achieve? Why is that important? Questions. There's one other question, which is, how do I expect you to go about achieving all this, right? But everybody understands the mission resonates. But in order for them to understand, it's more than just what's our goal. It's the why do we have to achieve it? And how do we need to go about getting it? So it's interesting that you say it the way you do, because I think that's people Other leaders I've had on the show describe it differently, but that jumps out at me as something that's common among really great people, people like you've been really successful and effective for a long time in this role, is they think about communication in a little bit of a different way. They know it's an ongoing thing and it's a challenging thing, but based on what you're saying, it's also like one of the most important things, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's a constant movement also of being self-aware as a leader.
Yeah.
How am I doing? Am I making a difference? Am I informing and inspiring? Am I strategically thinking? Am I staying ahead one step to help, but coming back to the moment to make sure you're on track and how can I help you? It's that ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
And we all, even as veteran leaders, sometimes we get stuck.
Oh, yeah.
In one spot. And we have to pull ourselves out of that to make sure that we're working on all areas to improve internally and externally.
Mm-hmm.
You field as well as internally, working with customer care groups and order processing, order to cash, finance teams. You really have to have your hands in all of it, HR, and really making sure that you're supporting your sales teams ultimately by having that relationship with every department. That is also critical, and making sure that you're building that bond for your sales teams.
Yeah, great point. All right, John, now, before I let you go, I'm just going to remind people to hang on for a few minutes, because after I let John go, I'm going to summarize a few of the kind of big ideas, the key lessons, and the thing that he shared. I'm going to challenge you listeners to think about, how does this apply, or how do I make this apply to my role, for my team, right? How can I take something that John's learned and apply it and get better at my job? So I'll do that in a moment. Before I do, John, thank you so much for spending the time with us. This has been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like you've shared a bunch that's relevant for the audience. So I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Well, I appreciate you asking, Matt. It's an honor. And I really thank you for the invite, and good luck to all the sales folks that are listening to your podcast. You do a great job, and I want to thank you again.
Thank you. I'm so glad John Santos was able to join us for today's conversation. There are a few things that he shared with us, some that echo things we've heard from other great leaders, really effective leaders, and some new ideas. So let me call out some of the newer ideas or different takes on things that are important to us as leaders, and then challenge you to think about, how do these apply to your environment? How can you put them to work tomorrow, right? Because these are good ideas. When I asked John about his system, he said a couple of things that sort of echo, that sound familiar to me. He said 2 big parts: structure and cadence. Really making sure that everyone understands the mission, what we're trying to achieve is the starting point, but then we need to have a consistent cadence where we do things like conduct meaningful one-on-ones. And he gave us a definition for meaningful, right? They're meaningful to the people on our teams. They get value from these conversations. They even look forward to them rather than dread them. And if you've ever worked for a leader who conducted dreadful one-on-ones, you'll know that's the opposite of what John was talking about. He said a few other things. One that really stuck out to me was, he said, always be aware of what's important to others, or words to that effect. We were talking about the people that we lead, but obviously that's a principle that applies both internally and externally, and a principle that John lives, right? Really understanding what's important to other people. How do I know that? Well, if you piece together what he said about having meaningful one-on-one conversations, there's a direct connection between your ability as a leader to have a meaningful conversation and knowing what's important to that other person, to the sales rep or the sales manager, right, that you lead. There's a direct connection between those two things. He talked about something that's sort of two sides of the same coin, where the coin is living in the moment. He said it's really important to stop and slow down and have partners, internal partners, external partners. He called out Ignite Selling and Steve Gallo, who's been a great partner to him for many years. He called out those partnerships, those relationships, because there are people you can have conversations with where you're in the moment, you're slowing things down, and that's good. John also said the flip side of that is that a great challenge to leaders is living too much in the moment. And sometimes our sellers can live too much in the moment. We need to be looking, or maybe even living in the future a bit. Having eyes and insight on what's to come is really critically important
for a leader to be effective in her role or his role. When he talked about partnerships and relationships internally, he also said, having two sets of eyes looking at things together is really helpful. I know that to be true. I do it from a coaching perspective, but also I've been coached and I work with partners regularly, and I know exactly what he's talking about. So I think the challenge here is, how do we make sure that when we have one-on-one conversations with our people, that those conversations are meaningful and that we're both sort of sitting on the same side of the table. We're both looking at something together, slowing it down, being in the moment, really thinking critically about the situation, whether it's that next call we're trying to plan or the deal that we're trying to win and strategize on right now, or the account, the relationship we're trying to strengthen, whatever it is, two sets of eyes looking at that issue or opportunity, critically important. Do you do enough of that in your organization, or do you need to find more time for that in your cadence? John said one last thing here. He's a lifetime competitor, right? Athlete in the military. When I asked him what he loves most about leading a sales organization, he says, I love to compete, and my will to compete inspires others. I think we need to pay close attention to that. Are we reflecting to the people on our team that we are excited to compete? Do we love it? Or do we give them the sense that we dread it or we're afraid of competition? If so, I think that's an opportunity. So again, I want to thank John for joining us. So much to learn and gain from his experience. My next guest in our upcoming episode has a different perspective. He has been both a sales and an enablement leader, comes from a kind of a financial and an operational perspective, which is really interesting. I hope you will join us for that next conversation. In the meantime, I'm Matt McDarby, host of the Sales Leaders Operating System podcast. Thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye for now.